Hi, my name is Nina Means. I'm the director for Hi, my name is Nina Means, director for Austin Community College Fashion Incubator, and this is Coffee Talk. This is the way that we're starting off our week, and I'm actually doing this as a pre-record because on Monday I'm going to be voting. So hopefully you guys have all had your opportunity to make it out to the polls. ACC strongly encourages its employees to make it out to the polls to vote and participate in our process. So I hope that you guys have all kind of carved out a time and made your own voting plan of how you're going to go and participate in one of the most important things that we do as US citizens. So that's the only thing I'm going to say about that today. We do this talk once a week where we get a chance to talk about a variety of things. Sometimes we're talking about the program and what's happening with the Fashion Incubator. If you keep up with us on LinkedIn, you can see there's some exciting new programs that we're launching. One is ATX Egypt 2, with the City of Austin Economic Development Department with the Global Business Expansion Team that's funded by the U.S. Embassy of Cairo. And so that's a really exciting fashion entrepreneurship and management program for more established fashion and accessories businesses. So if you've been around for about 2 years, the applications are live right now, and this is a really great opportunity for you to get a chance to apply to a really exciting program. It's completely funded by the embassy, so you'll get 4 months of virtual training about how to expand your company globally, and then actually get a chance to expand your market by testing product in the Egyptian market. So we'll be doing some work with some of our on-the-ground partners in Cairo, and likewise we'll be creating an exchange for them here in the US. So it's a very exciting program and one that I hope you'll participate in. So I wanted to get into what we're going to be talking about today for Coffee Talk. So it's been a little while since I've unpacked an article from, just in my readings. I try to stay up on what's happening in our industry. And one of the ones that had happened a few weeks ago, but we were in the middle of launching and getting other programs up and running, that I didn't get a chance to really talk about this before. And so I want to go back and start to unpack this particular program or this particular moment that happened with US Customs and Border Control. So if you guys have been watching the news outside of the election, outside of the pandemic, there have been a number of different trade things that have been going on that are kind of limiting some of the resources that are happening in some of our typical spaces, specifically in China. And what that means is that we are, having to find, as the fashion industry, purely from a retail perspective, purely from an apparel supply chain perspective, having to think about what are some of the consequences of that and what does that look like in terms of our local market and our local industry. And so Vogue Business actually did an article on September 15th to kind of talk about this particular piece of this particular change. And so mid-September, there was withhold release orders given for that was targeting apparel for cotton and other goods produced in Xinjiang. And Xinjiang is a very large region to the north and west. I believe it's pretty mountainous and arid. I don't know if arid is the right word, but basically it's where 85% of the cotton is produced for the global fashion industry. So this is a really big deal because a lot of brands globally rely on Xinjiang for their cotton production and their cotton milling. And so, the Chinese officials are pretty much saying that this is a non-tariff trade barrier, so it's making it more difficult for them to be able to move their product. But that barrier is being stated that, that there's a withhold release, meaning that the issue is that they are concerned that there is a lack of due diligence regarding environmental and human rights considerations, and that they really felt like they needed to tamp down on that region specifically to protect environmental and human rights. If you're the Chinese government, you're feeling very differently about that. You're feeling that this is a direct attack on the prosperity of the region, and that there's other, concerns at play. That concern for human rights is a bit disgenuine. So that's kind of what the conversation is. I'm not really going to comment on who is right, but I will speak to the effect of what this is doing for our industry, for the business, and what we could potentially see as a result of this, kind of movement away from. I think it's really just making sure that there's true mandatory due diligence on the environmental and human rights that are happening in the production of the cotton, the production of the goods that are coming out of this region. So let me kind of unpack a little bit more for you what those concerns are. I think that what they're seeing is that the human rights violations, are difficult for them to track, because what's happening early on is that, we've come to know something called WRAP certification. It's WRAP. And what that typically has done in the past is that it's certified that factories, or mills are appropriately caring for the people who work there, that the occupational safety, the labor standards, all of those things have been in compliance with the local law, and has, kind of even gone above and beyond as kind of as a universal standard of safety for these various areas. Now, what there isn't really clarity on is what happens when that factory outsources to another factory, or what happens whenever that factory outsources a portion of the activities to another place, and you don't really know what's happened throughout the entire value chain of the creation of a product, or if it's actually been sent into another country where the rules are not as strict. And so this particular release order, focusing on the cotton that's come out of there, now it's saying, well, from the raw material to the finished, piece goods, to the actual construction of the garment, we don't really know where the true origin of that product actually is. Because if it's sent out of country and it's stamped with, made in Bangladesh or made in Vietnam, you're still not really sure if that product, or if the cotton that originated in that product still came from Xinjiang. So the concern is, how are we supposed to know? And if there's a mandatory due diligence, and that these goods will be stopped at the the border, as they typically would be if anything's out of compliance, or something doesn't match up. That's what customs and border customs and control is supposed to do, is that they are supposed to make sure that things don't come into the country that aren't supposed to be here, that don't meet our standards, and then they detain it or turn it away. And so the concern is that, because that mandatory due diligence is so challenging based on the way that the value chain is currently constructed, it's a bit opaque. These are some significant concerns that larger companies are having, that do have a bit more resources to do their investigative work. Now, if you're an emerging designer and you're working with, a larger company that has, a really beautiful front office, and they're handling a lot of, your work for you, but then they're also outsourcing it to others, it's a very normal setup. You have vendors that are communicating biculturally on behalf of, various brands and businesses, and utilizing the resources locally to be able to get product made. And that's a very normal way to work. But what you don't know is what the conditions are of those people who are working there, and what the conditions are of the factories, and if the machinery is safe, and if it's been upkept and maintained appropriately. You don't know, you couldn't possibly know. So regardless of where you fall on this, whether the US government is actually doing something that they are doing to protect, or if the Chinese government is truly being blocked for prosperity, interests, the net impact for the fashion industry is something very, very different. That those are two things that are kind of at battle with one another. But I want to talk about three main areas where we're going to see some shifts in the way that we've been able to work. And so the first one is really transparency. this is something that we've been talking about in the fashion industry for some time now, and I would just say probably, even more so, given, I think there's a lot of issues that we are more attuned to that we have not been as attuned to in the past. This is something that um, we've had a little bit more time to slow down and to really take in what we're doing and how we're doing it. And we've been forced to change things in ways that we weren't really planning to change as quickly as we have in the last 6 to 8 months. And so transparency is one of them. So these brands, and especially emerging brands, as I mentioned before, the resource is to track down the true complete value chain is not just an exercise in earnestness. It's an exercise in resources. And so this may significantly limit brands that are really able to utilize, offshore resources if they are not able to successfully, truly understand the full value chain of what happens whenever they manufacture so far away. So, very few companies have a clear line of sight. I remember I used to, I probably don't need to drop those names necessarily. However, when I've worked for larger companies, I've seen that, we would know some very specific things about, particular activities with the factories that we worked with, but it was, it always became something that we were lightly aware of or not expecting all the time. Um, it could be both, right? Um, about what was happening whenever the products would come back. Sometimes it seemed like there was a disconnect, which is a normal thing that happens when you're working overseas with various manufacturers. But depending on which factories have the best price, you're really working through a vendor. So the factory that's actually putting the goods together could really be changing or being spread out over multiple factories to be able to handle a order of a certain size. And so it may not be that if you're churning out 100,000 units of the same style, that those 100,000 units may not be in the exact same facility. You may actually have those 100,000 units broken up over a few facilities, but they're all being managed by the same vendor. And that vendor is overseeing what's happening in those 3 different factories or 4 different factories. So there's a variety of ways that people are getting things done. But the transparency behind that can be still quite challenging. So insisting on that transparency, I really believe that we need to know who's making our clothes and that those people who are making our clothes should be protected and well taken care of. But I also understand that people need to work. And so there's a variety of other things that go into that. I was actually just on a panel not too long ago here with the State of Texas Alliance for Recycling, and we were talking about just the fashion industry's impact on environmental racism and all the pollutants that are put into the water supply and all of the different byproducts that come from manufacturing that can be of genuine danger to communities, as well as just having unsafe working conditions and what that can mean for people. So these are things that are of genuine concern, and things that need to be addressed genuinely. And so we hope for good things in that space. However, we know that our world is multifaceted and there are many reasons why things take place as they do, when they do, how they do. But I do believe that we're going to be seeing a lot more of this, as there's going to be a bit of rebalancing and reshifting with some of the ways that China's handling business, kind of the shift from, even where the ownership of businesses lie. If you've been following that particular conversation in the news, I would strongly recommend you doing that if you're not, because these are all things that are affecting how we go to market and what we're able to do and how quickly we're able to do it. So the other area that I wanted to talk to you guys about was, I said I wanted to kind of address 3 main areas here. The first one was transparency, kind of being able to follow that product throughout the life cycle, throughout the value chain. But then the next area is really about, if there's really going to be a potential stymie with that mandatory due diligence requirement, um, what's the next best option? And I think that as we are looking at, other countries that, can be worked with, India, Bangladesh, still you're going to have some issues where you're not sure if the cotton still ended up in those countries from Xinjiang to Bangladesh, Vietnam, India, any of those other countries that are, well known for excellent manufacturing, but are still in proximity to China. We don't know. We don't know where that cotton is originating from. So there's some concern with that. So in that, um, we've been talking a lot about, like, what does it mean to nearshore, and reshore some of our production and utilizing our cotton supplies here in the US. Really looking at what is the production of our raw materials look like here, and do we have room to grow that? And I think that, the bottom line with it, whether you're bringing only a portion of your business back to the States, or all of your business back to the States, this whole idea of being able to near shore your product, is really looking at the core of it is really about diversifying your supply chain. And honestly, I believe that this should be happening anyway. You should be diversifying your supply chain. You've got to manage your risk for how you're going to be delivering your product in a timely manner, with a high level of quality. It's not so much about taking everything out of one particular place, but if you're going to spend the time and money to do the mandatory due diligence, and that you do it effectively and you're able to manage it, then I believe that there will be businesses that will be able to continue to do what they've always done. But I think for the large majority of brands that do not have the resources to follow their fibers so closely, they're going to need to come up with other things that they can do in order to keep themselves solvent, and making appropriate timelines to be able to get their product to market. I think that we'll see some changes or some differences in, kind of winners and losers at the marketplace based on the speed that they're able to achieve. And I think that there's going to be a huge uptick in some of these local manufacturers, that are going to be growing significantly to be able to meet some of this demand. However, we do have a labor issue in this space. I think that what we really need in the US is really a growth, of our labor market that can support this kind of work. And that's something that I know that we've been talking about a lot at the Fashion Incubator, but we don't want to talk about it anymore. We want to be doing it. And so really supporting the development of a viable workforce that can support the needs that are coming down the pike as a result of these various pieces of legislation, pieces of legislation's not exactly the right word for this. It's really an order given by U.S. Customs. So these things are, affecting the way that we're able to do what we do. So, whenever we're looking at having various options, really being able to manage any of your operational snags, or things that will slow you down, or it's paramount. It's paramount to have options. And so, what we're hoping to see is really an uptick in the use of technology. We've got an incredible partner in Gerber Technology, where we have $13 million worth of equipment, hardware, and software at the Fashion Incubator, where we really are excited about putting that into work, to help the growth of this industry here locally. We are going to build something amazing. We're really excited about what is to come. However, we really need to get that workforce up and running so that we're able to support the growth that I believe is inevitable in this space. So the next area, and this is kind of where I'll probably end up, is really, kind of a bit back towards the transparency piece. But, I think that the obvious political concern here, about whether or not we're genuinely concerned over the human rights violations, is definitely one of those things that, you know, as a designer, as someone who cares about who is actually making our clothes, this is of concern. However, I want to be careful not to get into the politics of it. It's really just about the human component. Whenever, I believe that you've probably seen that campaign where you have the sign up and it says, "I made your clothes." And it's just really, bringing back the human component of how clothes are made. I think that a lot of us, who wear clothes and wear lots of clothes, thanks to social media and other things, we assume that there are just machines sewing all of these things so perfectly, and your clothes are still made by people. People are making your clothes. So just in case you're wondering how it all kind of magically showed up in your Amazon box, or in your favorite department store, your boutique, someone is making that. So it's not, I think that there's a bit of out of touchness that happens. We don't really sense that, but there are people who are involved. And so making sure that you're aware as a brand, that you are utilizing resources and services that keep people safe, and so I think that a lot of brands are opting for supply chains that they can observe more closely, so that they know exactly what's happening throughout the life of their product. They don't want to be inadvertently contributing to things that are really against the ethos of their brand and what they believe in. And so I think it's an opportunity for brands to really take a hard stance on, you know, um, making sure that they're protecting human rights. Um, Again, it's a back and forth battle about what the true reasons are behind these decisions in an election year. However, these are things that are of genuine concern. So if there are things like this that you guys would like for us to be talking about, I want to kind of stop there. If there are things like this that you guys would like for us to be talking about, different articles that are kind of standing out to you that need to be unpacked a bit, we'd love to have that conversation, and to be able to provide that content for you. So feel free to drop us a note on our LinkedIn, our Facebook, Instagram, or our Twitter. Send us a quick little note, or you can send us an email at fashion.incubator@austincc.edu. And we would be happy to support just some of the knowledge and learning here from our platform on our YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed, definitely hit the bell and get a chance to find out what it is that we're doing here at the ACC Fashion Incubator. Wednesdays will be filled with workshops. So we will continue with our technical design learning, product development. We did technical design earlier this summer, and we've moved into our product development series, all free, all on demand. So feel free to check out some of those playlists and what we've talked about in the past. And then on Friday, we'll be back with ACCFI Presents. So we are so happy to get a chance to share this kind of content with you. We'll keep you guys updated on all the new things that are happening. And, we'll be kind of targeting around 30 minutes or so for these talks. But definitely, we want to keep you guys updated. Just as a recap for some of our content for our programming that's happening at the Fashion Incubator, we have started our first cohort of the Designers in Residence program. And so our first cohort for the ACC Fashion Incubator just launched on October 1st. On October 7th, we launched our first virtual series sponsored by Macy's called The Future of Fashion. And this is a series that's really a great, I would say, a prequel to the Designers in Residence program, where you get a chance to get an overview, really a highlight of what it's going to take for you to be successful in the fashion industry, and really so much more so, what is it going to take for you to be successful in starting your own fashion business. And so we've really taken time to unpack a variety of different topics regarding design, development, production, supply chain, capital, marketing, sales. We're really kind of giving you a full highlight of the kinds of things that you're going to want to be thinking about as you're creating your own fashion business. It's a 6-week course, once a week, and then so far people have seemed to be really enjoying it. So the last thing that we were doing, and this is really one of the ones that we've just launched our application, I mentioned it earlier, is the ATX plus Egypt 2. And so that is a fashion entrepreneurship program for global expansion. So if you have been selling here for, in the Austin area for the last 2 years or so, we would love for you to apply. So if you haven't checked it out, you can definitely send us a note at atxegypt@austincc.edu. You can also send us, you can also check out the link on austintexas.gov/ATX Egypt. So you should be able to find it at both of those locations. So applications are live now. It's going to close on November 1st. It's going to be closed on November 1st. So we hope that we'll get a chance to see your application pop through if you're a great candidate for that. But it comes with a trip to Cairo. So it's a pretty unique one. I was there just last year. I saw the Sphinx and the Great Pyramids, as well as getting a chance to participate in the largest entrepreneurship conference in the Middle East region. So it was a really incredible experience. I learned so much. We got a chance to moderate a few panels and, spoke with a lot of interesting startup businesses in the Middle East region. So this could be a really great opportunity. We'll be partnering with Lorena Gowns. They do a subscription box service for a variety of categories, specifically for bridal and evening wear. They've recently branched out into casual, and so some really amazing product that's happening and circulating in the region. So many things going on, so many exciting projects happening, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. If you are following us on Instagram, you can check us out at ACC Fashion Incubator, on LinkedIn and Facebook again. And then on Twitter, we're at ACC Fashion Incube. And then for your email list, we'd love to catch up with you there at fashion.incubator@austincc.edu. So definitely check us out in those spaces. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us there. Again, thank you so much. My name is Nina Means. I'm the director for Austin Community College Fashion Incubator. And this has been Coffee Talk.